Ooh. All right, welcome back, everybody. We've got the recap for Snowpiercer, Season 2, Episode 5. Hope is...
Keep hope alive.
Keep hope alive. I went with hope alive. I missed the keep. Clearly, Richard is our intro man. I'm just not as classy. So you could probably, if I had a better camera, you could tell by the massive red spot on the tip of my nose. I am not the classy one of this group. Richard's got some lovely Japanese classic art behind him. I've got a door. All right. So I think we all know, and we're just going to continue that I get all my predictions wrong. So I've kept my streak alive at 0 for 5 now against 5 predictions so far we've had. I've got all of them wrong.
I wasn't so well.
Yeah.
I had 2 predictions last week. Let me just go through my notes. One was wrong because one was they're going to find out who is chopping fingers off, and the plot thickens with that one. And I said Josie would be one of the main themes of the episode, and that was right. And also 2 weeks ago, I said we're going to see a lot of difficulties for Leighton, and I was a week late on that prediction. Right. So
I'm just going to throw this out now. My horrible prediction of Melanie being the main character of this episode, I'm going to say that I'm going to be 1 week off on that, and that she is the main character.
Wow, that's looking pretty difficult at the moment, isn't it? I thought it was a really interesting episode because it kind of kept the main story moving, but there's a lot of little stories that I really liked as well. It seemed like such an action-packed episode, so it was one of my favorite episodes.
You like this episode?
Yeah, I thought it was really good.
I thought we finally got our filler episode. I
think I wanted the filler though. I wanted a bit more stories from some of the minor characters, and I think that it needed that.
Just reminded everybody, I'm American and I'm impatient. I want action all the time.
You're a baseball fan. I mean, it takes like hours of one inning.
That's true. But I also played, so there's part of
And then is one of your favorite sports golf?
Okay, all right. Look, I like all sports. I could watch the Ashes as well. Like, let's be realistic. I just say
100 meters. I just 100 meters.
You do not need to break down the jokes. I got enough hecklers in my own dreams when I'm actually performing live. You know what I mean?
But did you not enjoy things like Icy Bob?
I did. He's got a voice. That was cool. I liked parts of the episode. I just thought that it was definitely the filler episode. It's not that I didn't like the episode. It's funny because to go all the way back to last year, when all of this fun started and we reconnected and we started talking again, you said that you were watching it on Netflix, and I'll be honest with you, I sort of slugged through the first 3 or 4 episodes. I really like I said, I liked the movie a lot. Like, I was blown away by that. I thought it was actually a really good movie. And then to try and get into the show, I'm not one of those people that likes the trend in Hollywood of recreating things. So it took me a little while to get into Snowpiercer. But season 2, I sort of reaffirmed, I actually enjoy the show. So when I say I didn't like the episode, what I mean is that it's probably the least strong of the 5 episodes so far this year, in my opinion. But, it's important, obviously, to keep the storyline going. And we did learn little tidbits. The only problems I see is too many storylines. They're not going to be able to tie them all together.
I had an awesome idea. And I thought what we should do for the start of the podcast is we could actually go halves on a Cameo. Have you heard of Cameo?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm just looking on the website now. And you can get, it's like 25 euros, and you can get the Australian guy. We should get him to do our introduction.
Excellent. We get yeah. I'll sell you the money. Let me just sell some of my stocks. Yeah, no, I mean, we could definitely do that. maybe one week we get the Australian guy, then the next week we get the Australian girl because they're in love, but they don't know it, and that's another storyline that they threw in there, but they haven't thrown in there.
All right, so let's get into the episode. So it opens with Josie and Goo, and she's getting treatment by the Hedwigs, which is a bit more suspicion of them now because Icy Bob gave her a warning during the episode, and she managed to do the operation without any anesthetic, which seems unrealistic.
Yeah, very unrealistic. She's had also the panic attack seemed like the whole they're very good at putting very gruesome things in there or very risque things in there for something that's shown on regular TV, but they're not very good at the reactions to it. I don't think when she has the panic attack, like it was just sort of like, why would she have the panic attack when they left the room as opposed to when she's sitting there and they're grafting her skin or pulling dead skin off of her or whatever else? Like they're perfectly fine showing the operation. And they fall apart a little bit on the reactions. But she named 5 red things in the room.
So she's giving messages to Snowpiercer.
She is also giving, and not necessarily the clearest of messages either.
Yeah, they do seem a little, another couple of words could really clear up some misunderstanding, I feel.
Instead of breachman or whatever it was that she said in that last message where they thought that they were the ones that were cutting off the fingers or that they were starting a revolution or something like that. It turns out that it's like the very final scene of the episode, or one of the last scenes of the episode where they all get killed except for the big sauce monkey.
So another big person in the episode was Pike.
Yeah, he's continuing, isn't he? His evolution, he is just bought and sold.
Well, I think we're going to see a dark turn for Pike because he was kind of a fun knave of a character for the last few weeks, and now I think he's going to go full dangerous psycho because something, being ordered to kill Terrence has definitely opened up some old wounds in him.
Let's talk about that gun that he used. Was it an ice gun?
What was that?
Yeah, it sort of looks like it sort of looked like insulating foam.
Yeah.
It was such a confusing sort of, he puts it in his mouth, he shoots it, he kills him. And you're like, all right, so like he killed him. I'm actually upset that Terrence is dead. I like the balance that he brought to the train. You know, there has to be a little bit of darkness, and not like emotional darkness, but rather like the underbelly of things. And I guess you might be right then that Pike, takes over that darkness in essence. They sort of killed off the 2, I guess, angriest, factions. They killed off those breachmen, and they killed off Terrence.
Who's killing them?
Yeah, who's killing them? Probably the same people cutting off the fingers.
Well, who do you think?
I sat and I watched it again this morning, and I watched them all, and the only thing I can come up with is that it's got to be people from, I think it's people from Big Alice right now. Because they have some
weird... think the pastor's behind this in some way?
Ooh, that's an interesting theory. He's a weird character, isn't he?
Well, we talked about, there was that weird bit when he's boxing with Till. They're investing so much in Till's development now because quite early on in the episode, I even wrote down she was kind of losing it, very frustrated by the investigation. Yep. Gets drunk and kind of squares up to the breachman, and then she has that boxing scene with the pastor, and because he steps in.
Boxing, that's a weird scene as well because he beats the crap out of her. Right?
Yeah, but then there's that like changing moment where she fights her demons and she kind of gets up and fights back, and I think that's the symbolic turning point of her character. That
I've always hated this about, Hollywood and stuff like that, but I'm sorry, but a big dude like that punching you 7 times when you're down on the ground, there ain't no turning point in that. You're not coming back and hitting him or whatever else. It sort of seems like a little bit of overkill, and all the rest of it. But like that, like he just strikes me. You might be right. I never even considered him for that. He is a shadowy character in a certain way. He sort of has emerged from the shadows, and all the figures that killed the breachman were all hooded figures. So
right, so it gives off this image of cult, and and even he was talking like you can feel the tension on the train now. Someone's got to step in. Maybe Leighton's the wrong leader. A lot of stuff like that.
Well, I think the one thing that I have sort of gotten right-ish is that Till seems to be the only character that has continued with emotions, right? She has, like you said, she's developed a lot, and we got to see even more of that with her anger and depression, and coming through with her little turning point. And let's be realistic. You don't square up to those two breachmen, unless you get something a screw loose in your head. But we've seen her happy. We've seen her, I really have grown to almost care about the character in a way. And it's really the only character that I feel like they've been able to do this with. Like Josie is going through one of the most stressful situations of any character. I'll be honest with you, I don't care.
She's one of my least favorite characters on the show.
I just
maybe the least favorite character.
Yeah, I could care less what happens to her right now. I prefer Icy Bob in those scenes, and he barely says anything. Yeah. Although I do like his voice. I was just a fan that he has a voice and that he seems like a reasonable human being, and then he's got a book. Right?
Because they're doing him as some kind of like Frankenstein, like monster, but actually maybe not a monster.
Right. He's definitely not a monster. He's definitely there is a little thing right in that opening scene where the Headwards are like, we haven't seen Frostbite like this in a very long time. And I'm like, oh yeah, the other one's obviously Icy Bob.
However, despite Bob's qualities, he is not invited to the book club.
That's really sad, right? I feel like he's an introspective, thoughtful human being. And who makes the cut for the book club? The book club was a weird compilation of people, wasn't it?
Well, it was just the main people on Big Alice, basically.
I know. It was like, we're going to invite the seamstress to the book club. She shares a bunk with Alex, and that's somehow going to,
Yeah, that makes sense that, like, Alex invited her. But I quite like that idea. Like, you would think there would be some kind of book club.
Wilford continues to befuddle me as a character, as a human being. He's obviously a drug addict, but a drug addict that is obsessed with art. Like, I guess that does make a little bit of sense now that I say it out loud. But yeah, it's like, well, now that I've come to my senses, that makes a lot of sense.
You think Picasso made all that stuff sober?
Sober, definitely so. Van Gogh didn't have a crazy bone in his body.
Dali never took any
drugs. No. Salvatore Dali, he was the most sober. Right. That was all yoga. Yeah, so
yoga and tantric sex just taking it to another place.
Different people at the same time. Playing Audrey's music throughout the train is kind of a weird thing. Obviously, he has an affinity for music, which makes sense because when you're really high and you don't have TV, I guess music is the next closest thing you have. But the book...
I don't know if you've ever known anybody who has taken drugs, but people who take drugs, you don't. They tend to get quite obsessive.
Yes, absolutely. People. And I just have not been able to nail him down as a human. I understand that all these things, when I say out loud, make a lot of sense, but he is also a multi-billionaire guy that wants to save planet Earth for himself, and he is obviously, these all, as I'm saying them out loud, is obsession. But he has turned that rear engine of Big Alice into just, whenever they kind of zoom through it, I'm just like, oh, it looks like my college apartment. It's like a bong here, a bong there. He's got a full bar. It's just a wonder to me that he's a functioning human being at this point, and yet he's somehow trying to educate everybody on Big Alice with these classic books. By the way, do you know what book that was?
Yeah, Rebecca.
Okay, I've never heard of it. I know.
I think I just watched Snowpiercer.
I did watch it. They did mention Rebecca, but I thought that was the main character of the book.
There's a Hitchcock movie as well.
Oh, okay. So yeah, there you go. I'm learning something new. I was like, is it this? It's not the Scarlet Letter. It's not the.
It's got Rebecca in it. You should watch a Hitchcock movie. It's good.
You got it. That's homework for next time. So that was definitely interesting. The people that he had there as well. It's almost like it's his. It's his. It's a small group of trusted people that he can. Like the Headwards have picked up a lot in this episode, which is interesting. And they seem to have a really big hand in the dealings of Big Alice. and I guess now at this point, Snowpiercer, which is very interesting to me. Obviously, he's good at delegating to people that are more intelligent than him. We've seen that with Melanie. We've seen that with Alex. We've seen that with the Headwards. So, I guess, he fits the mold of some guy that owns a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Sort of in essence. But let's talk. There's a couple of things that I really want to get to.
Yeah.
And the first one is Alex and her turn away from Wilford, because it's getting dramatic at this point. She very much seemed, we've talked about how she has an affinity for Melanie, and how, that's kind of, there's like a little fault line where Wilford, I guess, always thought that he would be able to trust her. And because Melanie abandoned her, that was going to be enough for him to hold on to Alex, in essence. But it just looks like it's not, She's like, why can Audrey come over here and I can't go see LJ, which is kind of an interesting thing based off of the last episode where they agreed to be enemies, but obviously we know that that's not what they agreed to be. So you can tell they're just setting it up almost for like a revolution from her.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole series has been set up for that, and that'll be the last episode where Alex betrays Wilford and sides with Melanie, and there'll be some kind of battle, and someone will be victorious.
Yeah, and then the second thing is definitely Leighton, because he's losing.
Right.
I mean, I think that there was a lot of stuff in this episode, but that's the thing that stuck out to me the most, was the fact that, I mean, anything that has to do with Leighton at this point in this season seems to be him losing control and him having an inability to maintain his status.
Well, it's interesting because if one thing I would dare to say I'm nearly an expert on is the French Revolution. And what you find in the French Revolution is, like, in the first year of the French Revolution, it's really not that violent, because the provincial government takes over. And then it's only after about a year when the provincial government starts firing on people and their troops start firing on people that things, we get the guillotine out and we start killing people. And it almost feels like that, where, Leighton came in and then he's kind of doing what they always did, what Melanie was doing, or the fake Wilford was doing, and it's just as violent, and it's using getting Pike to kill Terrence and
right. I think we even go as far as to say it's almost like any sort of uprising. The new group comes in with a promise of a better tomorrow and more peaceful and all the rest of it, and once they gain power, they realize that there are steps that they have to take in order to maintain the power, things that they weren't necessarily ready to do. I mean, even here in the U.S., if you want to look at the Civil War as a sort of repercussion of the Revolution, where it was sort of like, we are a free nation, and we are
Semper Tyrannis.
Yeah, yeah, we're free from England. And we are our own nation. We will let everybody do what they want to do until we feel like we don't want to do that. And now you guys have to bow to our laws. Now, I'm not necessarily saying what they did was wrong. I very much agree that slavery should have been ended. Let's not get things twisted here. But also at the same time, that's definitely, the government sort of going like, oh, this is a necessary evil that we have to do. And we have to kill a lot of people in order to assert our dominance. And you're seeing Leighton feel as if he has to do these little acts here and there. I mean, he's hiding a lot of things. Like, he has that conversation with Zara about Josie, but the doctor comes in and he immediately cuts off the conversation. We've talked about him not trusting.
His inner circle's getting smaller.
Yeah, it's bad. Like, things are closing in on him, and he's going to have to make a big play at some point, I think, and that's going to be either his biggest success or his biggest downfall. Right.
That's why I'm not too sure that Melanie will be back next week, because kind of if she comes back, I think these problems go away to a certain extent. Whereas I think if she's not here, we can develop this story a bit more with Leighton and his struggles.
Yeah, I think there's probably going to be about 20. Well, I mean, there's probably going to be another 10 to 15 episodes in the season, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we've got plenty of time to develop his story, and we've been without her for a couple of episodes, and they discussed it's funny because I really I wrote down on my paper, I was like, I was wrong, but I was right, because they used Melanie a lot in the episode without actually using her. So it's almost I almost wanted to come on here and be like, you see, I'm taking credit, but obviously I know that she wasn't the main character. But because they spent so much time on her, and because, they almost left it as a cliffhanger, because they didn't say, there's nothing, if she's dead, they're going to show her dead. That's my thought on it. They'll show her frozen on her Volt sled in the snow, dead. So because
she's not dead.
Right, exactly. So because we have, so that almost leaves it as a cliffhanger of she hasn't contacted us in this whole episode, but we've talked about her a lot, but she hasn't contacted us. But she's, so I think it's got to be next episode. If it's not, I'll pay for the full cameo.
Okay. Come on. Don't be in it, Melody. Take another week off. We keep seeing this character development in Ruth as well. She's loyal to Snowpiercer.
This is what I wrote down. I wrote down Ruthie is the positive force on the train. Mm-hmm. Anything to keep up morale, it's Ruthie. Anything to keep people happy. I mean,
like the kids, that children's school painting.
That sign, that anything. She is, and granted that's the first rule of hospitality, right? But she is loyal to that first rule of hospitality to a fault. She is always happy. Even when she's concerned, she seems happy, right? And it's incredible to me. In 2 or 3 weeks, I've kind of completely flipped on Ruthie, where I like her now.
Yeah.
Because everybody is negative. And here's Ruthie, just this blonde-haired ray of sunshine, and I don't mean that in I'm obsessed with her in that sort of way, but she is blonde-haired, smiling, happy, and she's always like that, even, and you're right, she's loyal to Snowpiercer because she doesn't go across to Big Alice.
Which she got offered, yeah.
Yeah. Which also leads me to Audrey made the wrong decision.
Well, we've kind of missed Audrey so far, and she was one of the biggest parts of the episode because she was invited over at the beginning of the episode to have dinner with Wilford.
When I told you when we talked the other day that this episode was not what I was expecting, I did not expect her storyline. I just kind of expected it to be a secondary storyline throughout the rest of the season. And the fact that it took main stage to start the episode, and well, not to start the episode, but throughout the episode, sort of surprised me a little bit. Mm-hmm. But there's some interesting interactions. I don't really love the storyline of her and Wilford, to be honest with you. Obviously they need it. It's part of the story. It's important. It builds him as a character. It builds a sort of, I don't know, ambiance around the whole thing. But I just don't love. I don't love their interactions. Mm-hmm. But the one big suspenseful moment of the whole episode was when she was trying to open the communication box,
right? And
he was pouring wine, and they're obviously building to that. Will it happen? Will it not happen? Type of deal. And it was a little anticlimactic because she didn't open communications. Then she got found out, and now she's staying on Big Alice.
Did she? Did she get found out?
Yeah, he saw it.
He saw the screw loose, but
hey, look. I'm gonna say something which I've said now twice. You don't put something in like that without it being important.
Oh, you just reminded me. Yeah. Maybe. No, yeah, maybe. But then I also think one of the reasons she's decided to stay on Big Alice was to get that task done.
Oh, I agree. But when I say the wrong decision, I think that Wilford is such a calculated and cold human being that he'd be willing to put aside this vice in order to protect the overall Big Alice, Snowpiercer, power that he wants, if that makes sense. You know, like he may torture her, he may ruin her life, he may just do subtle things, he may, you know, I don't know what her drug history is, but he may get her hooked. She might have been hooked on something when, you know, for the 7 years that she was his slave type of deal.
I loved, you know, I've been talking about this every episode we've done, how the music has been awesome. And I loved it when they did the Afro Man Because I Got High. You remember they did that one bit of that? Like, that was a tune back in like 2001 or whenever it came out.
It's only got 2 songs, and the other song, I can't remember the name of it, has just the absolute funniest opening to any intro to any song I've ever heard in my entire life. And I'm just going to defer so that way I can share it. It just goes, There's a blind man. He's walking down, he's feeling his way down the street. He walks past a fish market. He stops. He goes, "Good morning, ladies."
Oh my God.
And to this day, I can't listen to that. Colt 45 and 2 Zigzags. Baby, that's okay. There you go. But yeah, she, as she's walking through as well, she's the lady in red.
Yep.
You know, listening to her own music, walking through the tailies while they're looking at her irreverentially. If that's even a word. Irreverently. There you go. I put an extra syllable there. That was an interesting scene to me as well.
I mean, you got to think these tailies, they're like, you know, starved of any attention or anything, so it's not the most unrealistic thing.
At the red was Winnie's hair. That's right. The angel of death has a name, and it's Winnie.
Right. The message smuggler.
Yeah, the little message smuggler. Yeah, I just, you know, obviously they're going to have to build on that, and that'll probably be one of the main themes going forward for a little while. I have a feeling Audrey ends up dead before the end of the season.
Yeah, that's a good call.
Yeah, they've got to build it for a little while. I think maybe even they'll put in something. Maybe it'll even be Leighton. You know, maybe that's like maybe that's a sword that or the hill that he dies on, so to speak. That, you know, he starts questioning Audrey and her loyalties because she stayed over, even though she is actually doing her best to help Snowpiercer. You know,
well, maybe... I gotta think he will get more paranoid as the episodes go on.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe because we've already seen this happen once, maybe there's a fault in communication with Jody and him, and that leads to his paranoia about Audrey. And this is obviously never going to happen because I'm predicting it. But it almost seems like she is the perfect person to really set Leighton's paranoia off.
Well, she seems quite good at manipulating people, so yeah.
Right. Right. So let's see. What else do I have here?
I've kind of gone through everything I wanted to go through.
Yeah. So predictions. I've already made my big prediction for next episode that that Melanie is back and that we'll see. I mean, they're already. You know, I thought that scene where they were looking outside from the tail of Big Alice, and you could see that building of whatever it was. It was a Tibetan monastery or something like that.
Yeah, it's like the famous one where like the Dalai Lama used to live before he got exiled.
Yeah, I thought that was that. You know, I think that's a good.
Or like Lao Shower or something like that.
Yeah, something. You know, it just as a side point. It's funny. I was sitting there watching it, and I was like, last week they were in Alaska, now they're in Tibet. Man, have they gone around the world fast? And then I realized they're going the other way.
You're American, you know. Don't worry about world geography. That's why I'm on the show.
It took me a full minute. I was like, wow, they said they've only done 7 revolutions, but somehow they've gone from Alaska to Tibet in one episode. And I was like, yeah, they're actually really close.
Right.
You know, given, I mean, you know, whatever. So yeah, so that's my main thing is that Melanie's back next episode.
My main thing is Melanie is not back. And I really think we're going to see 2 big focuses of the episode. One is Leighton's struggles, again, continuing at worse. Especially if it comes out that he killed Terrence, or he kind of ordered Terrence's murder. And I think we're going to see a lot of Audrey in the next episode as well.
So my secondary one is that, and this is going to seem a little bit broad, but I think next episode is going to be a lot about relationships.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily obviously Aubrey and Wilford, yes, but there was mentions of the seamstress and the Australian guys. Once again, I'm of the thought process that you mention it, it's going to happen at some point. And then the pastor and Till, I think that's good. When I say relationships, I just mean in the broad sense. I think that
was even interesting to see her talking to Osweiler as well, because he seems to have been underused. I don't know if he's going to come back in some way.
Right. And then the final relationship that I think, as they hinted at it, would be LJ and Alex. Somehow, I think, but also they've now shut the border, so it's kind of interesting,
Oh, they can always write some other way. They just write another room, like a boxing gym. When have you seen that boxing gym before? They got a full-on boxing gym in there.
Sure, but if you go to tnt.com/Snowpiercer, you can check out all the train carriages, Richard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can do an in-depth one. And you can even design one of your own, and it might even make it onto an episode.
That's awesome. I'm going to go on it.
What happens when you don't get commercials? Also, because it's Black History Month, all of my commercials are about Black movies at this point, which just sort of seems like, watch Black Panther. It's in the title.
All right. On that note, we will move on from episode 5, and we will be back next week with episode 6.
Absolutely. Let's keep this train moving next week, you see?
I like it.